because I respect your time and I don't want to waste it. Our next speaker is Father Thaddeus Hardenbrook. Father Thaddeus is the president of the Great Mater Femina Orthodox Theological Academy and the rector and pastor in charge of St. Lawrence Orthodox Christian Church in Felton, California. Father Thaddeus' church is the one that we were praying for during the fires, where the fire was getting within a few hundred yards of his house. We were watching the maps very carefully, praying very fervently that the fire would arrest, and it did by the grace of God. Some people lost their homes. Father Thaddeus thankfully did not. He runs, he's been the pastor of St. Lawrence for 20 years, I believe, is that right? What? 21. He also runs St. Lawrence Academy, which is a K through 8 school, which prepares kids to go into the local high school system, but not be wildly corrupted by it. He actually does a great job preparing junior high schoolers for the realities of high school. And he also runs the Abbott's Thrift. It's a 10,000 square foot thrift store next to the church, which allows them to, it supports the church in ways that allows them to make large land purchases, which otherwise would be impossible in the redwood areas of California. Father Thaddeus is the one responsible for allowing me to start up this mission on the west side of Phoenix, and he's become, like Father Hans, he's become my brother, and we unfortunately talk to each other like brothers. So if you hear us insulting each other, it's nothing personal, it's just how we talk to each other. Father Thaddeus, please come and share a little wisdom, or whatever you got.
Please, let me know what the sound is like.
Gotta get close to it.
Okay.
Do the televangelist thing. Hold it up.
I'm so close to starting this whole thing with snarky remarks towards you. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to do this. I'll get distracted and move away from the microphone, so if you can't hear me, just make sure I know. Can you hear me now? I have to get a lot closer.
Yeah, that's better.
I move a lot when I talk, so I don't know if this is going to work. Ladies and gentlemen, this works better. Thank you. It's so exciting to be here that it's hard to focus. It's hard to pick a topic and really discern what needs to be said. Thank you for being here, first of all. I will start with a little snarkiness. Whenever Father John and I speak at a conference, he has always had the slot after lunch, which he refers to as the food coma hour. So when I arrived here, he looked at me and he said, "You're speaking after lunch." It was revenge. It literally was revenge. You need to go to confession. I realized as the presentations were being made that there's a chronology or a history in each of our personal lives that parallels the example that we're trying to give and the inspiration we're trying to give to you today. First of all, I've known Metropolitan Jonah for about 30 years. Father John and I became friends 10 years. How long has it been?
I think about 12 years.
12 years. Very good friends. And then Father Hans, I just met yesterday. But Father Hans, after 5 minutes being with us, he's like, "This is going to be good." You know, we're of like mind. And as I was listening to the presentations, I realized one of the or two of the aspects of our little brotherhood that makes us, we're the type that we love each other, and then we go away and we do our work and we do our best to serve God. We don't see each other sometimes for years, and then we get back together again and we just pick up where we left off, and real friendship there. And when I was looking at those men, I realized that one of the things that we share, or two of the things that we share, one is a degree of, and it's not very guileless for me to say this, but one of it is a degree of guilelessness. We really are, to our fault and our detriment sometimes, very transparent people. We really are who we are. We're confident enough in who we are that we just can't help it but be who we are. But we also have a deep love for the people. Like when somebody asks a particular question, Father Hans said, actually it was Metropolitan Joni, he said, I just love them. What do you do with all these problems? I just love them. Very hard to do that, but absolutely true that is the solution most of the time. We love the people. We're what you see is what you get kind of personalities. And the other thing that's in there that I realize too that is in our brotherhood of love for each other is that we have all suffered. And we have suffered for the church in sometimes very dramatic ways. And we have recovered from those eras of suffering that God allowed in his providence into our life. Suffering that, in my personal experience, stripped us of everything except for Jesus Christ. And when you come back from that kind of experience, you have Christ and Christ alone, and everything else is peripheral. You're going to do a lot of practical things. There's a lot of work to get done. But in the end, experientially that you can lose all of that, and that your relationship with God is not only unaffected, but probably improved. And that's something that we have in common together, as well as having suffered for the faith and come through it and experienced resurrection. What I realized also when we were talking is Father John has been here at All Saints for 4 years.
Almost 4 years.
Father Hans, if I remembered correctly, is 9 years, say 10 years into the mission effort that he is making. I'm on the other extreme. My father was the missionary, and I am I'm the coach that inherited the mission. And so our parish at St. Lawrence is now technically 21 years in the making. And although we have a community, and I'm going to paint kind of a picture of my own experience, and then I really want to open it up to be answering questions, inquiries that you have, or even revisiting questions that we had earlier that you want some more information on, whether it's finances and tithing and getting new clergy and all of that. Those are universal problems that we can revisit. But I'm 21 years into the parish that I am over. But it was built on a community that's been together for about 45 years. And so I realized that I have an opportunity today, something I wasn't planning on focusing on, to give you hope in the sense of being able to tell you, okay, we've heard from 5 years of effort and we've heard from 10 years of effort. I have the wonderful privilege to be giving you some examples from 20 years of effort. And I realized we had this maturing example that we could give to the people. And so I'm very humbled. Honestly, I'm hesitant to talk about the way that God has blessed our community. I genuinely mean that. I fear God enough to fear boasting about what he has given us, lest he take it away again, because we know that he can and he can allow that. But we're 20 years into it. My father was a priest in the Orthodox Church. My father-in-law was a priest in the Orthodox Church. The joke that always follows that is, and I had no plan of ever being a priest. But we plan and God laughs, as they say. But we have, as Father was saying, we have a beautiful church. We have 4 parcels, adjacent parcels, downtown Felton. We have a kindergarten through 8th grade school. We have a bookstore that's open 6 days a week, which is functionally probably our number one evangelistic tool until 2020 came. And then we got the flood of predominantly young men and some young families. Right now we have 20 catechumen, including children, and 11 inquirers. Too many, like literally, it's hard to handle. Pray for us. As Father Hans said, God will bring them to you. And I tell the people that openly. Greet the guests, because God evangelized them. God brought them here. And if we don't take care of what God has obviously brought to us, we're asking for trouble. And so we are not, I can honestly say, I'm trying to think, but we are not overtly evangelizing, and haven't for several years at least, because God is just bringing them to the door. They literally show up. I have a catechumen who, his first visit to a service, then afterwards I sat and had coffee with him, and at the end of the conversation, he said, well, next Sunday can I be enrolled as a catechumen? And I had never met a non-Orthodox person that even knew the word catechism, or being a catechumen, or being enrolled as a catechumen. And I literally laughed and said, how do you know this stuff? How do you even have the language already? And he had become, like it is a very common story right now, he had become disillusioned with the church that he was in. 2020 especially. My line for 2020 is, we have to remember, crisis does not make us. Crisis does not make us. Crisis reveals us. And in 2020, what was revealed was the actual degree of faith that people have. And it also revealed these seekers that are out there, and we joke that they come to the church pre-filtered. Because if they came during 2020, they had the faith and the desire and the proactivity to show up at church in 2020, particularly in our area, which a third of the county burned, 83,000 acres. Fortunately, only about 1,000 homes. Could have been much, much worse. Thank God for our firefighters, all volunteer fire departments in our area. Different story though. But during that time, if they showed up at church in the midst of that year in our area, they had a love for God and a proactivity, a zeal for God, a force of will, we would say, that brought them to the church. And it's been wonderful. We also have a thrift store, as Father said. We have a 10,000 square foot thrift store that is, took a long time to develop, went through years of difficulty, like any project does, but is now extremely stable. It's managed by our proto-deacon, who is an excellent businessman, and it pays the mortgage on 2 of our 4 parcels and donates money to the church back, as well as donating to just about every nonprofit in our area, from the firemen and the police to sports at the high school, the public high school. We really try and spread around the love. And we're in a time now where, another ministry that we started just a couple of years ago, we call it the Affordable Housing Ministry, because one of the fundamentals of community is getting young families into a home of their own. Stop renting and buy a home as soon as you can. And we found in our area of California that the cost of living is high enough that even if both the husband and the wife were working and had good jobs, good income, it's easy to make good money in our area, but it's very expensive as well. They could qualify for a great loan, but they didn't have a down payment. And this is where our effort, as Metropolitan Jonah was saying, to experience God, to be united with God in the love that is also the love of our neighbor. There's a material context for that experience, and in the monastery it's the monastic community. In the parish it's supposed to be the parish community, but that is not a familiar context wherein there is unfortunately dependable spiritual support in the parishes in America. They are identifiable communities, but and I can launch into this if you're interested into it, but they're not actual communities. They're not functional communities. There are a lot of other things, but they're not an actual communion of believers. But what we do is, one of the things we found over time, one of the very practical things that we had to do is we had to get young families into homes. Well, they had a great income, but they didn't have a down payment. And so the church, out of our own financial stability and out of the donations that come from our people and from our thrift store significantly, we have recently we started what we call the Affordable Housing Ministry, and we have 5 families in homes of their own, and the church supplied a $40,000 down payment for each of the families. And it's all legal. It's technically a second on their property, but we reserve the right to forgive it. The interest rate is inflation only, just to maintain the value of the dollar that we gave. Contractually, if they sell the property, they have to pay back the church, and they can start paying it back anytime they want if they can afford it and it's wise to do, but they don't have to start paying it back until their first is paid off. That probably alone will cause a lot of questions, like how do you pull that off? And one of the things that I want to really inspire you to today is, like Father Hans was saying, you have to believe that these things are possible. I want to get into how do you make them possible, what is practically required in order to experience it. But one of the things that I love to share is that it is possible, because a lot of times we have not yet experienced personally a success that gives us hope for future success. We just haven't seen it. It's like tithing. If you come from a community that tithes, it's absolutely normal and everybody does it. I've been tithing since I started making money. I would suggest that you start, if you haven't, give your kids an allowance and have them give 10% to the church. When you're tithe, when your full tithe, 10% is only $1, it's super easy to do. But it lays the foundation that this is what I do. And then when you get an actual job, you're making a little bit more, your tithe goes up, but you're used to giving away that 10%. And one of the hardest things to do, and it's a transitional period if you're trying to move towards tithing, is the sacrifice of giving up money, because we're used to having it and spending it however we want. Whole big topic we can touch on. But wanting to share the success that can be had, because we went through in 2020, in 2000, when I was ordained, the year I was ordained. We owned nothing 20 years ago. Nothing. We didn't have any investments, no icons, no property. We had Christ, and that was it. And now in 2021, we have a beautiful church. We have probably, with today's market, probably $5 million worth of property. We have money in the bank. We have a kindergarten through 8th grade school. We have a bookstore that's open 6 days a week. We have a thrift store that is supporting everything that we do and is loved by the local community. And it's scary to say that. I want you to know that. It's frightening to acknowledge that and to acknowledge that publicly, because we know that if we do not continue working for Christ and we do not continue being grateful to Him for what He has done for us, he will take it away, because we didn't learn our lesson the first time. But I want you to be inspired that way. One of the things, a specialty of mine, experientially and academically, experientially, I started off at 4 years old on a Christian commune in Northern California. So from 4 years old on, I have had a very normal for me, but in retrospect, intentional community experience throughout my life. We always had somebody living in our house, always. I grew up with people that I'm completely not related to, and I do the same thing. Sometimes my wife is okay with it. You bring home people, have them live with you, save them if they're willing to be saved. But from 4 years old on, it was communal living. In Northern California, we had a 40-acre former sheep ranch. We had about 20 guys, single guys, and about 10 women, converted old chicken coops into bunkhouses. And my dad grew up in the city, in San Jose, poor family in the 50s growing up, and fell in love with the mountains, with space, having grown up in the city, with space to be the Christian community that you needed to be, and to be around people that were literally your co-strugglers. And so then when we moved into the area where we're in now, when I was in kindergarten, the very first thing we did is we started buying property that was near each other. And to a scary degree to the local community. They thought that a cult had moved into the area, because when a house would come up for sale in this one region of homes near the elementary school, we would buy it. We specialized because no one had any money. No one. We had a lot of skilled labor, lots of carpenters, electricians, mechanics, a lot of skilled labor, but no money. And we would buy the worst houses that you could buy. It turned out to be a good investment financially. We just couldn't afford anything else at the time. And then we would have work days every Saturday and we would physically remodel the house. We had enough labor to do that. We had lots of energy and tools, no money. So the family that bought the property would buy the materials, and we would literally do all of the labor. And that put people into a good financial position, because the house would immediately be worth way more than they paid for it. And I'm gonna rabbit trail for just a second to point this out. When we are doing what God is calling us to do spiritually, there is a material benefit that goes along with that. And to be theological for a moment, we are creatures, we are psychosomatic creatures. We are made out of the soul and the body. The human being, and Father, we have so many themes among us that we have arrived at naturally. The whole idea of an orthodox anthropology and understanding what a real human being is, and being a real human, and moving from being an individual to being a person, segues directly into how the community is manifest physically or materially. But God's blessings always come that when you keep the spiritual commandment, there is a material benefit that comes along with it. When the Jews in the Old Testament did not have refrigeration, they didn't understand bacteria and viruses and everything, they had a food law from God that they kept for spiritual reasons, and it made them the healthiest society at the time. If you study the Old Testament food laws from a health point of view, they would have literally avoided every known disease at the time simply by keeping the law of God. There's always a material benefit to our spiritual effort. And so, as a community, we needed spiritually to be together, and that required for us to be physically near each other. And so we brought into Orthodoxy when I was 19 years old, we brought in a community that had been literally focused on being a Christian community, and then it became Orthodox. So we brought that in with us. We baptized that effort with us, and that probably historically is what makes us, is a foundation for our uniqueness. But then academically, this is a theme that I've revisited over and over again, where we have to be near each other. We have to be near each other. And I'm going to use some sweeping generalizations that you can ask questions about. There are truths that we have to present as a generalization. Always there is a specific context and specific persons to work out the realities, but we have to start with some basic things that we accept and we start pursuing in life. Because in the Orthodox faith, one of the things we do all the time is we openly identify and acknowledge the ideal that we are striving for. We never give up the ideal that we are striving for. We are striving for deification, right? Theosis, union with God. As Father said earlier, we are striving to be the sons and the daughters of God the Father, which makes us spiritual siblings of Christ himself, the Logos. Who I am today, way down here, right? And those two realities, I don't despair over that, but I keep my eyes on the ideal, and then I accept who I really am today in my strengths and my weaknesses, and I lean towards that ideal. So the generalizations I'm going to make have to do with those ideals that we're striving for. One of those ideals is we have to be near each other. Physically, we have to be near each other. And when you form a community intentionally, when you have intentional community, the first thing you do is you gather together and you're near each other. Obvious examples of this being a problem are churches around the country where when the church was founded, it was a nice neighborhood. And maybe people all lived in that neighborhood. I know of one parish very well that just in the last 20 years has experienced this. And over time, the neighborhood starts becoming a worse neighborhood and people don't want to live there. So they all move away, but they don't move the church with them because it's historic or they like it, they're attached to it or something. And by default, they create what I call a commuter church where you're living too far away from the church. And this will blow your mind, I think, but one of the principles, and I'm actually studying this, I'm in a PhD program where I'm focusing on the psychotherapeutic efficacy of geographic proximity. What the heck does that mean? And my proposal, my research proposal, is that there is identifiable and quantifiable spiritual benefit to being near each other that is facilitated just by moving closer to each other. That you will be advanced in the spiritual life, in the therapy, in the healing of the soul to a greater degree just by being near each other. And from years of experience, my wife is a brilliant analyst and remembers everything. She's the mathematician and analyst. She could have been like a CIA analyst, for real. It's scary being married to her. She remembers everything. I'm the liberal arts teacher, craftsman, but together we make a great team because we really truly cover just about everything between the two of us. And so over time, I knew that the people that lived closer to the church did well. We actually moved our church at 1.3 miles. Actually, over 45 years, we moved it from one town to 3 miles away to another town to 3 miles away to another town. And that first town was the one where we bought all the neighborhood and the people thought we were cool. So we literally have been able to watch, when we just moved the church 3 miles, how does that affect the attendance and how does it affect the frequency of people coming to church, things like that. I'm doing everything intuitively. My wife can remember it all. She could tell you the addresses of all the people that moved over the years. And when I was doing my MDiv thesis, I touched on geographic proximity, and I estimated, based on some analysis of the Sabbath day journey of the Old Testament. So in God's law in the Old Testament, you had to live within a Sabbath day journey of the synagogue. You could not live further away than that because you had to make it to church. We would say, since you had to make it there frequently, you had to live a maximum distance within a maximum distance from the synagogue. And my wife and I would kind of argue over the years that I thought it was like 15 to 20 minutes based on various things. And from her observance of our community, she said, no, it's 10 minutes. And I'm married to one of those people that is almost always right. My family celebrates. I have 4 kids, 2 daughters, 2 sons. We celebrate openly when my wife is wrong. It happens so infrequently. And so then I entered into some PhD studies, started doing some research on the Sabbath day journey and everything, and it comes down to, in my latest calculation, 9 minutes and 45 seconds. And she said, see, I told you I was right. And she was, it's 10 minutes. So start thinking about that for a minute. 10 minutes, not only from your place of worship, but from your neighbors. Within 10 minutes. Again, big ideal out there that seems totally unrealistic, but it's got to be in your mind. Because there is a degree, we are creatures of time and space. We experience our existence within time and space. The angels don't, not compared to us. And there is a degree to which what we would call convenience, I prefer to call it spontaneity. We are not there's a maximum distance we can be from our neighbors and from church will allow for us to spontaneously participate. We all may have made the commitment to be in church on Sunday morning. Glory to God. God bless you. We all may have made, if we have the opportunity, the commitment to be at Vespers on Saturday night. If we have it, God bless you. But the real health, and this is all, I love when Father Hans was like, listen to me, I know what I'm talking about, right? He's not citing his sources or anything. I'm the youngest of the group, but I'm old enough too that I tell people I am the source. If you want to go do the research yourself, go do it. But I have, and I've known it for so long and watched it for so long that I can't even remember where I learned it. But it's true. And when you have to have this, to really be healthy spiritually, you've got to be going, and don't let any of this disappoint you. I want you to go away inspired. But these are truths that we have to face. If we're really going to be healthy spiritually, we need to be in church at some point during the week. In my parish, we have Tuesday Vespers and Wednesday Vespers, because it is too far to go from Sunday to Sunday, particularly on a spiritual level. It's too far. There's a reason why the Typicon of the Orthodox Church has services prescribed for every day. There is a reason that in the monastic communities they are praying for sometimes hours a day. Because there's a fundamental, it's like going to the gym. I always tell people, I used to be an athlete. I was a coach for a while and a personal trainer for a while. And I use the analogy of a gym a lot. And you can't walk into the gym and just do whatever you want with the weights that are there or whatever. There are specific tools that you use to make specific gains, and you have to do it a certain way. And if you do it that way and you do it frequently enough, you will make gains. You'll get stronger. And the spiritual life is just psychological in the sense of the soul's existence. It's just the flip side of that. We have to be feeding our soul and exercising our soul regularly so that it is strong. And corporate worship is a part of that workout routine. Our personal prayers is, it's the fundamentals that we're doing at home all the time. It's eating well and generally caring for our health. But then we go and we work out hard at corporate worship. And so we have to be doing it more often than once a week. The studies show that with our kids, if our kids are in church for an hour and a half, it's more than that, 2 hours, maybe 2.5 hours a week, it increases their keeping the faith by, like 100%. It's amazing. And that is, we looked at that, we look at these statistics. I'm not an egghead. I'm not. I love books, I love learning, I love teaching, but as all my friends know, if God didn't bring me into the priesthood, I would have just stayed in my garage and worked on cars and gone fishing, which I do like to do. But we do look at these hard realities because we want truth. We want the truth of Christ, and we want the truth of spiritual success. We want to facilitate to the best of our ability the salvation of our soul, and it runs parallel most of the time with the health of our body. And so one of those things is you need to be in church more often. And that requires a lot of things like a choir and a place to worship and clergy that can serve that often. But it also requires that you be close by, because we can't, in our existence within this time and space that we live in, it is very, very infrequent that we come home from work or we come home from school or we, finally got the kids off to the babysitter and we look at the clock and go, oh, I have a spare hour. I think I'm going to run down to the church and go to Vespers. That does not happen. It actually, statistically, does not happen with 20 minutes, 15 minutes. 10 minutes is the spontaneity thing. And we come home, and when we're within 10 minutes of our friend, our neighbor, or 10 minutes of the church, we look at the clock, and we frequently have 10 minutes to spare to change our plans a little bit. Hey, it's 10 to 7. We just finished dinner. Let's go to Vespers and then watch the movie together as a family. You can add that in there. And that might not sound very important, but it is crucial. It is crucial to getting into the experience of, like the fathers have talked about today, an actual experience of the Christian life and a transformation of the person. Vladika and Father Hans focused on the spiritual aspect of that, and I am, although that is absolutely the foundation and that's the cause, I would like to offer myself to you today to look at the practical side of that. Another aspect of community we have to have as an ideal that we're striving for is having a school. The schools form the mind and the soul of our children. You will never have the hours of influence on your children that the school has. I support homeschooling. I've homeschooled a couple of my kids for a time. I've got one at home right now. To be brutally honest, generalization, I see homeschooling as like a 50-50 success rate because the parents either have the ability to be educators or they don't. And you just have to face it. It's a reality that you're being successful or not. I have kids homeschooled in my parish for all of their years, and they're doing great, and they have a great job, and they're married, and they're having a wonderful time. I have kids in my parish that have a deep, deep wound and anger towards their parents because they homeschooled and the parents failed. They don't read well. They felt dumb all through school when they would be around their peers. So I support the idea of it, but ideally, and we did this, we have a school, it's kindergarten through 8th grade. It went through high school for a time. We may be returning to that now given trends in public system. But we realized that if we have them kindergarten through 8th grade, we take them through both phases. These are oversimplifications, but basically you've got a formative phase with your children that culminates at 5, and you have another one that culminates, it used to be 15, now it's down to 13 because of the internet, honestly. And if we had the school through 8th grade, we had our children. We formed them. We have paid teachers that are experts in their areas, but they are under the umbrella of the church. They are their Orthodox worldview is being nurtured and not prematurely challenged. And they've gone through, psychologically, they've gone through the second and basically the final formative period in the covering of the church. And they're prepared to go out then and to go into the public school. So for a good number of years now, we go through 8th grade, we do an 8th grade catechism class that prepares them specifically for going into the public system. I call that's the popping the bubble of innocence. And I have to do it pastorally. They need to not be surprised by anything they run into in the public system. And I give them great answers to give to the other kids. I can talk about that too. But now we're starting to play with the idea of reopening at least a church-sponsored cooperative of homeschooled high schoolers. And that's driven just by what the world is going through right now. Because it's not just challenging anymore, it is threatening. You're not just of a different opinion in high school when you don't do drugs or watch pornography or date. You're a bad person. And that's a different challenge. It's okay, debate is one thing, we can prepare them for debate. When they are told over and over as teenagers they are bad people because they're Christians, because they think homosexuality is wrong, or whatever the hot topic is, it's very damaging. It's actually, technically, it's emotional abuse that they're suffering in the high school. Our high school is not particularly bad. But I want to give you the opportunity to, first of all, everybody stand up and stretch your legs for a minute. This is my battling the food coma. I was a high school teacher for a couple years, so if I treat you like that, forgive me. But actually, stretch, go up on your toes. Okay, sit down. if you need to, feel free to get up and walk around the back room or whatever. And so all of that, this is very spontaneous now. I was going to present to you the history of community building, looking at St. Pachomius in the early Egyptian desert, which is a fascinating study. Some just bullet points of why would that be a theme is, first of all, community building has never been easy. Never. It's never been easy. Just give that up. It's work. It's labor. It's an asceticism that we are called to. And shortly after Constantine ends the last era of persecution, in 312, the Patriarch of Alexandria has been martyred in 311. So, I mean, the martyrdoms are going right to the Edict of Milan. Then St. Anthony goes out into the desert. St. Paul of Thebes has already been out there. These are the fathers of anchorite monasticism, or the solitaries. And then St. Pachomius comes along, and he's a character. He feels very much called to monasticism, but he is very uncomfortable, I think it would be fair to say, living alone and not being actively involved in his neighbor's life, because he is supposed to be loving God and his neighbor. And he can't come to peace, I think it's fair to say, with the idea of going out in the desert and living alone because of two things. He feels called to love his neighbor actively, having a neighbor in front of him. And also he realizes very soon, after only about 7 years of being monastic, that it's very difficult to see ourselves clearly. And it is a very unique calling, although an absolutely legitimate one, and one that we hail and love in the church, that anchorite that goes out by himself, or St. Simeon the Stylite, or someone who's living in seclusion, or St. Theophan the Recluse, who's in reclusion. Although remember, he was a school teacher and all kinds of stuff before he did that. But that's a very unique calling. The huge majority of us need to be in a group, and my phrase that I use all the time in my parish is, we need to be knowing and being known. We need to be knowing the people that are in our life, and we need to be known by the people in our life. We will not grow, I don't want to be negative. It is very difficult to grow significantly spiritually outside of community. And so we've got to be near each other. We have to be involved in people's lives. I say very often, if you can't babysit each other's kids and you can't borrow tools from each other, you live too far apart. And on a practical level, particularly when you're talking about established communities, this could be a radical suggestion. Because they're either going to be selling their own homes and moving closer to the church, or they're going to be getting rid of the church and moving into where the people are in the cluster. And as a generalization, I would say if you come up against that, yes, you have to do one of those things. You will be inhibited in your service to Christ, in your own salvation, and participating in the salvation of your neighbor. You can achieve both, but you're going to be inhibited in a very practical way if you live too far apart from each other. And St. Pachomius from the very beginning proved that was true. And he, over time, came to the conclusion that people who could endure community life together in the monastery, this is the founding of Cenobitic monasticism, that they achieved a far higher degree of sanctity than those dwelling out in the desert by themselves. That's a very bold thing to do. It's St. Anthony the Great that's out in the desert by himself. But he believed it was a greater asceticism. It was harder to live in community. But he said the revelation of the self, and Father Hans was talking about knowing ourselves, right? Going from an individual to the person that God created us to be. It's very difficult to do that outside of community, because our neighbor reveals our virtues and our weaknesses. If I'm impatient, I go in my room. In the monastery, they go in the cell. You pray ceaselessly, you do prostrations, you work on yourself. But it's when you come out of your room or out of the cell and you're with your neighbor that you see who you really are. And I end up, I'm still impatient. I'm still greedy, I'm still whatever, and then I go back and work on it more. If I'm alone in the desert, unless I have an incredibly unique calling, and even with St. Anthony the Great, St. Macarius the Great, they came to places where they didn't know what to do, and God sent angels to reveal to them what they needed to do. There had to be another being there, another person to facilitate the revelation they needed to experience. And I am going to open it up to questions. Feel free to stand up if you're getting sleepy or anything, and let's start talking about some stuff that we have, whether it's from the earlier talks or my talk. Ask me to clarify some generalization that I made. Let's just go for it and make it profitable. Someone beat you, Father. Whoever's in the back there.
Well, how did we lose this? Because, I mean, this is the history.
Oh, thank you.
This is the history of Orthodoxy, and this is how St. Herman planted with communities. How did we veer away from that? How can
For my MDiv thesis is available to you via Father John.
Did you post that yesterday?
I started reading it again and myself. I'm a character that way. I read stuff that I wrote and I go, wow, this is great. I've literally done research sometimes on the internet, and I'll find something and be like, this is the perfect article on exactly what I was thinking, and then I get to the bottom and it says, by Father Thaddeus, and they've posted on somebody else's website, you know. I'm a character, but I'm also very willing to accept that and entertain you. So basically, simple generalization is that, the church communities, my MDiv thesis is on the development of the parish. It is literally maybe the most non-researched aspect of the early church, because it was so natural, and you didn't have to instruct anyone as to how to be a village or a family. Christ came at the fullness of time. And that, my argument is, that is not only a spiritual fullness, but a material fullness in the same sense, which means society and the family were at the perfect place to receive him. So you didn't have to teach anyone about community 2,000 years ago, literally. The parish comes out spontaneously out of families hosting the reception of communion for 300 years, say. And in the earliest one I think they have found is the two oldest house churches. They call them house churches archaeologically. So it's an existing house that had a church added on as like a large room where people could gather. The two oldest ones are, in the early and mid 200s, so mid 3rd century. One amazingly is in England. Amazing. The other one is in Jordan. Then they have what are called purpose-built churches, where they literally built a structure for the first time ever to be specifically a church, and those are in the early 300s, 320. So house church is 220, say, and on, and then purpose-built churches 320 and on. Purpose-built churches obviously were put off by the persecution because you're hiding in people's houses or in the catacombs or whatever. So, but to oversimplify it, from about 300 to 1750, for basically 1,500 years, every culture understood community. And so Christianity would come into the community and sanctify what was already there. You didn't have to explain to a dad what it meant being a dad, or a child, or a family, or a village, Then from the Industrial Revolution / so-called Age of Enlightenment period on, the family and religion are identified enemies of globalization, what we would call globalization. In the early Enlightenment period, they would just call it, freeing the mind from the snares of, religious oppressors who want us to all be minions or something. And now it's globalization. So for 1,500 years, there was almost no need to explain how to build a community, because everybody lived in community. You had to borrow tools from your neighbor, otherwise you couldn't get the farming done in your yard. You had to babysit your kids. Grandpa and grandma lived with you and babysat your kids. It was easy, way easier to have a bunch of kids because you're surrounded by babysitters. I had the wonderful experience personally to be on a piece of property with my parents, having kids, and just experiencing that firsthand. You know, our family, by God's grace and mercy, successfully experienced, you know, an extended family experience and living in community. It's so normal to us. We're lonely if, you know, there's not people out in our pool who didn't ask to come over, right? We love that. So for about 1,500 years, you've got an easy baptism of the local village, cultural village or family into the church, and it's a very seamless transition there. The parish, remember, the word parish is a geographic area. It's not an individual temple. It's a geographic area. And so originally, what church did you go to? And this is what formed parishes as geographic areas, is you went to the church that you could get to. It was literally just geographically close to you. That's where you went. And that establishes the area called a parish. It's a geographic term. So 1,500 years of cooperation. And now, referring back to Father Hans, you know, we are, along with losing the family and losing the village first, and then losing the extended family, then losing the nuclear family. Now we don't even know what a man or a woman is. Sounds like a joke, right? And it's literally supposedly true. And so what is happening from the Industrial Revolution on is we are experiencing literally the dehumanization of the human race. We do not know what a human being is anymore. We don't. That is the root of anxiety. That is the root of mental health issues, addiction, because we don't know how we work anymore. And I tell the young people, you know, you're a fish up on the shore, and all your friends are saying you ought to feel good being there. And you don't have enough, you can't breathe, you're laying on the sand rather than being in the water, you're drying out in the sun, and you keep telling yourself, this ought to work, you know. And it doesn't, because you don't know you're a fish. Get the heck back in the water, and then everything is okay. And so, you know, this all wraps together. We're starting a new mission, bringing people into the Orthodox Church, seeking God, getting on the path of deification, reading the lives of the saints, studying Scripture. At this point in history, we are trying to become human again. And a lot of my teachings have to do, or are rooted in my community it's a repeated theme, so they're very familiar with it, is just the actual, as I said, the psychosomatic creature that we are. What does it mean to be made out of a body and soul? We know the body pretty well. We're aware of it, we know of its powers, but we're usually very unfamiliar with the soul and the powers of the soul. Ladika referred often to the nous, the eye of the soul, or the mind, the intellect, but we have to be very careful about the translation of that term or the definition of those terms. We have the appetitive power, where appetite, desire comes from, that's in the soul, and we have the insensitive power, where jealousy and anger, zeal, motivation comes from. I mean, we're a creature that functions in a very particular way. And one of those ways that we are meant to live, to exist, to be, is in a communion of persons. We are not meant to be isolated. When the monastic recluse goes out into the desert, one of the greatest sacrifices he or she is making is they're giving up the context for natural human life. They're leaving community, because we're intended to be in community. And that all, it's in my thesis, but that all has to do with our being created in the image of the Holy Trinity. We are meant to be not in a mingling of our essence with the other people, but we are meant to be one, unified. Scripture tells us in perfect unity of mind and thought, and that is the nous and the brain. The mind of the soul and the mind of the body, without any divisions among us. That's how we are intended to be. And in order to do that, we have to be near each other and interacting regularly. one of the things I'll allude to really quick before the next question is just when it is really hard to go into real community at first, because you have to be comfortable with being who you really are. When we started our school, the hardest thing was to have your kids go there and reveal what your family was really like. Right? People think about, oh, it's going to be hard, it's going to cost money, we have to have a facility. You can figure out all of those things. Then you realize that, you know, this intentional, for some people, but usually unintentional bubble that you live in, where you've gone to church on Sunday morning and told your kids to behave really well, and they manage for an hour and a half, and then you leave. And all of a sudden, everyone really knows you through your kids. And part of it is wonderful and exciting and funny, and part of it is deeply humbling. And some people can't make that transition. It's too foreign, they don't desire it, they have too deep of wounds. And so even in my studies, what I'm finding I have to accommodate is that there's a maximum distance you can be from community, but there's a minimum as well for individual people. Some priests can live next door to the church and they love it. My dad did that for 2 years and almost went crazy because people knocked at the door all day, every day without telling him that they were coming over. So think of that as something too that we can talk about questions-wise. Father?
How many parishioners that you know of live near 10 minutes to your church? That's the first question.
We have on the books, we have about 350 people. During the last year and a half, we've averaged about 170 people there at church. We've got a lot of kids, very, very evenly distributed demographics. So if one parent doesn't come, that's 5 people that didn't come to church that day. And the majority of them live, if somebody lives 20 minutes away, we know distinctly that they can't make it to much. Ones that live 15 minutes away do better, definitely. Pastorally, the number in my mind was more like 15 minutes. But my wife was right in the end when you actually count how many people are coming regularly to midweek things and being really actively and technically spontaneously involved in stuff. It's the people that live within 10 minutes. And we had to move involuntarily. We moved 3 miles once voluntarily to go to a bigger building, and then we moved 3 miles again involuntarily because we lost that property. And so we've been able to watch ourselves and watch the attendance come and go when we make those shifts. And so I was very confident about it, but now I'm trying to quantify it, like actually put a number on it.
So you don't have like a percentage?
I'm sorry, what was your original question?
What's the percentage of your parishioners that live?
My wife would know, I don't know. The majority do, yeah.
And I just, forgive me, a second question to that. Like in California, the prices, all of our housing prices everywhere is skyrocketing due to inflation and the debasement of our currency. But how do we? Yeah, I love it. I think
Yeah.
it's great, but to actually implement that, to do that.
Yeah, so again, generalizations have to remain true, and then those are the ideals, and we're looking at who we are, where we are, and what's going on.
Yeah.
In our region, particularly, the cost of single-family houses is just absolutely out of control.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking 900 square foot home on a little lot, $800,000.
Right.
The good news, because it fits well with a practice that we've had from the beginning, is that the larger pieces of property with 2 houses on it and 5 acres, or 3 houses on it and 10 acres, are only a couple $100,000 more, because the people, they don't want the responsibility of being a landlord. They don't want to maintain the yard or whatever, the acreage. And so what we do is we get multiple families to go in on bigger pieces of property. And so you buy, but then you end up, if you buy it, just to make the math easy, for $900,000, but then, and you've got 3 families going on the property, then for $300,000, they're getting an acre and a half and a home. So it's actually makes it literally affordable for them to move on. And we've done that from the beginning. That's another thing we've done is if you have 2 families that have an income but they can't buy a house, they buy a house together. And we show up on a Saturday and we just put up a big ugly wall in the middle of the house to divide it all. And they live there for 3 years, and then they refinance, and one of the families takes hopefully the increase of value money out of it and goes and buys their own property. Takes a lot of faith to do that. One of the things we have in our community, because the older half of the church has been together for 45 years, we have a level of trust. We've been through everything imaginable together. And so I've actually sat with real estate lawyers and said, here, there's a loophole here, and we can get out of sales tax here, and get out inheritance tax here, and we can escape all these rules. Why aren't other people doing this? There's a loophole for everything. And she said, they don't have the trust that you guys have. She said, parents don't even trust their kids nowadays enough to make the kind of arrangement with property and things that keeps you out of the government, the government from getting a lot of your money. I'm indecisive. You've had your hand up for a while. Yes.
I was wondering if you had a critique about technology, because I wanted to ask earlier and I felt really uncomfortable because we have folks here who create websites and
Yeah.
stuff like that. So it's a little bit awkward.
I did too. You're in trouble.
But okay, in light of what you said about being near each other, and also that you can't grow significantly spiritually without being in community, the situation where people are learning about orthodoxy outside of community on their own, online, without having that face-to-face pruning of yourself, where you're seeing who
Yeah.
you really are. What are your thoughts on the potential pitfalls of that, and what do you see as a way to remedy that?
So we have to, again, so my ideal would be that we have no internet and no smartphones. I have a smartphone technically. I call it, and my secretary and my administrator, who's one of my deacons and my brother-in-law, we call it Father Thaddeus' camera, because I do love taking photos. I love photography, and it happens to be able to make a call if you need it. I do not give it to anyone for a lot of reasons that are basically personal. But when you look at the impact of the internet is like, and I was an IT guy for a publishing company, Orthodox Publishing Company. I'm out of that now and a dinosaur, but there was a time where I was very tech savvy and I built all my own computers and everything. But when we look at the internet, the advent of the internet, it really is like the new industrial revolution. And it's taking us from broken humanity to total delusion. Total delusion. And the fathers referred to, even like digital orthodoxy or virtual orthodoxy. Big problem. So ideally, I'm out on 1,000 acres and we've created an Orthodox town and we have a big EMP device that destroys the phones when they come into the area. Then I have to say, where am I today? Who am I working with? In my own family, I have to do this. School went online. All of a sudden, all my kids had to have a computer if they were going to stay in school. So we have to look at where we are. So can the internet be used for good things? Absolutely. And there is a degree to which we should be competing on that level. I have a Facebook account. I've had it for a long time. I use it to help people. I am a weird person in that I have a Facebook account. I have for years. I post on it regularly. I promise you this is true. I do not cruise my own feed, anyone else's. I do not look at it. It's an absolute temptation. It's a waste of time. It's literally addictive. And it's not real. It's just not real. I'm a literature major. I have a personal library with thousands of books in it. I believe we should have a book in our hand. I don't like Kindle. Very convenient, but if you ask me, no, there's an incarnation of the word of the author in that book. When you're holding a Kindle in your hand, it is, you can read the book, but it's this thing that becomes different things all the time. And, or even on the computer in general, when you're on the internet, everything is presented as exactly of the same value and the same authority. You can be reading a research article from Harvard University or some crazy guy's personal website on whatever the issue is, and they present the same. And even that is a part of the delusion, because when I meet the crazy guy, I figure out he's crazy. When I meet the scholar, I am illumined by him, and that is a part of us wanting to be experiential creatures. I'm sorry if I'm not being practical enough. Just tell me.
Do you think maybe there should be disclaimers, like that Orthodox sites would say something like,
I think this is evil, but we're doing it anyways.
no, like they should say something like, please go to your local, priest or
Oh, yeah.
presenting this, but
Sure.
we highly,
Sure.
blah, blah, blah.
And it can be, one of the things we share in common, this team of brothers that love each other, is we want to be really pragmatic, but we want to be more positive than negative. And so, like, even if I felt like, even on my Facebook page, if I felt like, it was dangerous to even be on there, I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say, I'm on here for you, but it's dangerous. But I would say things like, like sometimes I'll post little memes that just say, like, I enjoyed making this post today, but now I'm getting back to my actual life, or just a motivational line. Find the community near you. Get offline and get into real life. Use the virtual world to get you into a real world. Encouraging things like that, because we can't become dogmatic about it, because it's part of the challenge of this age, and it's very easy to say this is unhealthy or this is wrong. Very hard to escape those things or to transform those things into good. So we have to put in that labor to do that, because otherwise we'll just alienate people. If I ran around and just said, if you're on Facebook, you're a bad person, right? They just don't talk to me anymore. If I teach and I nurture and I use Facebook for them to realize that it's a waste of time in a lot of ways, right? Then, that's just, I'm achieving the same goal, but I'm not alienating the person. Because it goes all the way back to, and we talked about this over the last couple of days, if they are experiencing unconditional love, and this is what St. Pachomius in the 3rd century realized, is if they were going to have community, you had to prioritize love of neighbor. And your neighbors drive you crazy. It is like, it is easier to go out and live alone in the desert, literally. And so some did in order to facilitate their unhindered pursuit of holiness. But ascetically, it is much more difficult to live in community. But when we live in community and a person knows that we love them unconditionally, whether it's in confession or being a spiritual father or just being a co-struggler together, they will reveal what their weaknesses are along with their strengths, and we utilize the strengths for the edification of the church and the salvation of souls, and we accept the weaknesses as simply areas of needing work, but we don't reject them because of it. Oh gosh, yes sir.
Brother, could you elaborate on the material benefit to following God versus prosperity gospel as we know it?
I know the term prosperity gospel. I've been Orthodox too long to know much about it, but I know what it means. If you love God, you'll prosper materially. So the easy answer to that is read Father Thomas Hopko's Finding One's Calling in Life. And because in the end, when it comes to material wealth, there are people who are called to be wealthy in order to help the church. When Constantine became the unifying emperor of the Roman Empire, one of the things he did was he built with his own money 5 of the first big cathedrals in Rome. Huge benefit to the church. God called him into a place where he had a lot of money and could benefit the church. But there are also people who are called to poverty. There are people who are called to suffer physically with illness. It's actually their calling. And they find virtue in being a Christian amidst that struggle. On a practical level, when I'm talking about the material, when I said material benefit, I wasn't talking about money. I was talking about there's just, because we are a creature of soul and body, when we take care of our soul, our body, either literally the body or our material existence, is blessed as well. Tithing, to jump kind of on topics, tithing is an act of worship. When you offer 10% of your income to God, you're worshiping Him in a material way. You're not bringing a lamb to sacrifice anymore, but you are sacrificing from your income. And there are blessings that come into your life. My father always taught particularly the protection of the rest of your money. And so that would be a material benefit that came with tithing. Tithing is a spiritual action. It takes a spiritual desire to give from my income. The material benefit that comes with that is the rest of my money is being protected. And one time as a teenager or maybe early 20s, I stopped tithing in my life. So God knew, I got off the path. He needed to correct me. And so long story short, He let me crash on my motorcycle. And I came home, I was beat up, but not injured seriously, and I was crying. My mom came out in the garage, there's blood running down my back. She's checking to make sure I'm okay, and I finally said, I'm fine, And she said, then why are you crying? I said, I wrecked my motorcycle, right? So then my dad comes out. I rode nothing but a motorcycle for 10 years, so it was my baby. And then my dad came out, asked if I was okay. I said yes. And his next question was, have you been tithing? And I said no. And he said, son, you can give 10% to God, or the devil can take it all. Right? And when I got my next paycheck, I also got the bill for repairing my motorcycle. They were, I promise you, pennies different. I got paid, $747.56, and the bill for repairing the motorcycle was $747.32. And that was a spiritual experience. Really, it was. And then I realized, oh my word, when I was tithing before, God protected me from this kind of thing happening. And so I am not a superstitious person at all, but that is a spiritual experience that I have had personally and that I believe in deeply. And start on a practical level. If you're not, first of all, go do some research on tithing. Read about it. Find an Orthodox source. I could give you one, or I can give Father John one. That really goes into the Old Testament and shows that this is not one of the laws from the Old Testament that was eradicated by Christ. And this is how the early church functioned. It's the establishment of state churches that confuses the people, because then all of a sudden the state is involved in the well-being of the church financially, and in those, to oversimplify again, in those situations, whether it's Greece or Russia or the Middle East, the church starts giving the people money all the time. And the formation is that money comes from the church. You never give to the church. That's a dilemma I've literally worked with people on in trying to build a new mission. Because they just don't, it's like, well, the church is out of money. Let's just wait for the church to have some money. Then we'll build a mission, right? And it doesn't work that way. But go find a good source on it. Father John can give you good information on that. Realize and defend that it is the traditional economy of the Orthodox Christian Church. Then we start practicing it again. We have to have the boldness to talk about it on a local level. I'm not going to tell you you're bad for not tithing, but I'm going to call you and motivate you to tithing. I'm going to share with you what wonderful things can happen when we do start tithing. That it is an act of worship, that God will protect you when you submit your money to Him. And then, where was I going with that? And then creating a new generation of people for which it's just normal. It's just normal. It's what you do. But it is the practice of the church. Deacon Michael, forgive me.
How dare you speak to me? Father,
Thank you.
so I have two practical questions in regards to use of resources. So in the early days of your guys' community, when you had dozens of priests and clergy and you had services every day, it's no longer the case now, but you still have a lot of services. how do you kind of check your pulse and know that you're doing as much as you can, but not more than, but you're not killing everybody?
Yeah.
So like at our satellite mission, we're up to 3 services a week, which I think is pretty good considering our resources, but we are blessed with a lot of people that are competent enough to lead services. But still, there's a desire to do more, but also not kill Joe, who's on his 4th kid now. Father Joseph, I'm sorry. And then the other question was, so your community in the early days when you were overflowing with resources was also doing satellite missions, one of which my friend Steve and I both converted into. And you are very well acquainted with Father John's satellite mission strategy. What was the strategy back then, and did they differ in any way? And was there any particular way that you guys went about that may have been a little bit different?
Okay, so remind me what the second question is. Not now, but when I ask you to. I'm not a auditory memory person. Somebody mentioned burnout earlier, and I thought about that. In the beginning, we don't want to kill ourselves with like convert craziness or convert zeal, where we have to pace ourselves at a marathon pace, In Lent, I tell my people, in Clean Week we sprint, and in Holy Week we sprint. We sprint from the beginning line of the race, and then we sprint towards the finish line. But throughout all of Lent, it's a marathon. I think community building can follow that metaphor in the sense that you have that initial sprint of getting the people together that are interested in doing it. Let's do this, let's get a church near us. But once you get into a degree of having anything, gatherings particularly, or services particularly, that have to be maintained, you also have to be really honest about what your resources are and what you can maintain for the marathon. It will get easier over time, but you can burn out if you're not careful. And it's a real thing. My wife and I cared for my father got dementia. A year later, my mom was diagnosed with terminal cancer. She died a year later, and then we cared for my dad with dementia for 3 more years. And we experienced, and I'm a parish priest, and I've got 4 kids and 5 rentals on my 27 acres. And it was real burnout. It was almost the end of everything because we were stretched too thin. So you have to be very careful about that. But I can't speak to, I don't know your situation well enough. Anything that tortures Deacon Joseph, just go ahead with. There has to be some martyrs.
I'm doing you a
Unwilling,
favor.
yeah, exactly.
I love you, Father.
In our church, we call them saint makers. We're being his saint maker, because if we achieve torturing him enough, he'll become a saint. So we'll be his saint maker.
You're such a good man, Father.
And then the second part of my question was, so in the early...
Oh, the methodology of that.
Exactly.
So because we were a movement that came into Orthodoxy, so we had a lot of infrastructure already in place that we baptized it all. We made it all Orthodox, but the functionality we brought in. There were very strategic planners. Father John is a very good planner. And then there were people like my dad that were utterly intuitive and spontaneous in how they went about it. My dad functioned on the providence of God. He would just run wildly until it was just obvious what direction to run in.
So it was kind of like, if someone in Vacaville's like, I'd like
you're talking to people and everything, and you realize these 2 people are only 10 minutes apart, and then we're getting a geographic area that needs a parish, and so then we'd go there. Other people would, they would do what Father John does, have a conference, get people that are interested, and network more efficiently. But, we have to use the talents that God gives to us. And so I am a wonderful dreamer, and I am a wonderful worker. Like I can do the big picture and really see where things need to go in the future. And I can be in literal therapy for hours with people working on trauma and stuff like that. I don't like planning. I can do it, but it takes me a long time. I'm very slow at it. My brother-in-law, who's one of our deacons, is an incredible administrator. And so this gets to the idea of team building too. You want to build a team of people where their strength is a part of the team that's making everything work well. And that is where, when I was called by God to be the priest of this community, the blessing that he brought in disguised as me, was that I'm very much a team person and a delegator. So when I find out someone is better at me than something, and they want to be in charge and they want to serve the church, I delegate 100% to them. So you want to build that team. So if there are planners, let them plan. If there's dreamers, they need to dream. They need to be creative in order to keep the vision of where you're going. But put people in the areas where they are the most talented in the group. And when someone comes that's better than you at your job, let them take over. I remember Father Thomas Kopko saying when he toured the country speaking all over, he said the most universal problem he saw were people that had been in a position in the church too long. And they needed to turn their responsibilities over to a new generation of people. But build a team. Build a team of people that, and you allow them to perform well in the areas of their strength. I would suggest I tell people to do the Gallup Strengths Finder test to find out. You can go online and do it. It's like $15 for your top 5 strengths.
That's G-A-L-L.
That Gallup poll, Gallup.
Gallup Strengths.
Strengths Finder. For like $75, you can get like every human strength in the priority of your abilities. I also suggest that people do the Natural Church Development, NCD, and there's an Orthodox version of it. The Natural Church Development Gifts Finding Test to find out what your spiritual gifts are. And then you start looking to serve in those areas. And it doesn't matter, I think it's important to say, it doesn't matter if you're in an established church or a mission church or thinking about helping with a mission or anything. You want to know what you're good at. Because we all have strengths and weaknesses. The Gallup Strengths Finder test, Strengths Finder, and then NCD, Natural Church Development Gifts. It's a gifts test, gifting test. Yes, ma'am.
I wanted to touch on your creation of the school. How did you decide that was an idea for your community? And then how did you go about starting that and the planning phase? And then what was your first step to creating that taking the vision and creating an actual school?
So the bullet points would be we became Orthodox and then we discovered St. Theophan. In those days, St. Herman Press out of St. Herman Monastery in Platina, California, where Father Seraphim Rose was producing the majority of the Orthodox books in English. They did a lot of St. Theophan's works I think it's St. Theophan, The Path to Salvation. One of the chapters is on child rearing. And we were taking St. Theophan very seriously, and so then when we looked at child rearing, we realized that the influence, and one of the blessings of our church was we never did anything out of fear. My dad just did not tolerate that, and I really don't either. We did things out of conviction and wanting to enter in as deeply as possible into the apostolic faith. So we looked at the formation of children, and we had a lot of educators in the church. My mom was a public school teacher for 20 years and a teacher in our school for 20 years. We had public school teachers, and we just knew when we looked at Orthodox formation of children, we knew that schooling was so important. And it was the beginning, this is 30 years ago, so it's the beginning of the school curriculum moving away from education and into indoctrination. And so we were like, we've got to form our kids, and we have to have more time with them. We have to teach them the faith, not protective, not hovering over our kids at all. We teach them to swim, and then we chuck them in the ocean, Figuratively. I could tell you a story about getting chucked in the ocean. And so we looked at, and my father-in-law was the assistant priest and also our youth pastor, and he had a lot of experience in youth. And so we just looked at it, and the hardest time at the time, statistically and spiritually, was junior high. And we looked at the history of education, and that psychologically, from a secular point of view, even the worst time to take a student and take them from one teacher in one classroom into multiple classes and multiple relationships with teachers is the junior high age. It's the worst time to do that to a preteen or early teen. And so we started with junior high, and then every year we added a class up and a class down until we had we didn't do kindergarten for years because we wanted the kids, when you study education, even the formation, just the formation of the brain, we do not need to start school as early as the public system does. The public system is public babysitting. They want both parents in the workforce, and so you've got to take your kids in early. And so we didn't do kindergarten for a long time, but then we finally did, mainly out of the parents needing to both work, have a dual income because of the cost of living. And so then we opened up kindergarten on that same principle of they're going to put their kids into some other preschool or kindergarten, so we might as well, keep them with us. And then we went all the way through, and for a while we had kindergarten through high school. I've got a doctor out of that high school. I've got, nuclear engineers out of that high school. Very successful program. But it was very hard to do a high school curriculum well because you have to have people who really know their area of expertise. And then the other thing was we found that then the kids that are going to do fine they're going to do fine. You can do almost anything to them. They just have it in them to do fine. The kids that are going to fall, that are going to go through an era of struggle, it was worse to keep them in the high school under the umbrella of the church and then release them to the world at college age. That was a worse fall. Some of them off on their own for 4 years. That's where we lost the majority of kids. They'd go to a 4-year college. Their parents thought that was a great idea. Not a great idea. There are situations where it might be okay. Generally speaking, not a great idea. Waste of money. And you send your kids to somewhere where there's no support system spiritually, no church for 4 years, and you expect them to come back healthy. Don't do that. So we pastorally, we realized it was better for them to stumble in high school. They're there in the community, they have to go home at night, if they're sinking out with a girlfriend or they're dabbling in drugs or something, there's just more accountability. So if our kids are going to stumble, we want them to stumble during the high school years.
Hey, Father, just a heads up, it's 2:30. If you want to take a few more questions, go ahead.
I think it's... Go for it, yes. Eye contact. You.
Okay, thank you, Father. Father, I wanted to ask you said your original community was non-Orthodox, right? So how did you invite them to Orthodoxy, and what did you do with those who chose, if they were those, who chose to remain non-Orthodox, but remained in a close proximity, because that could be an issue in a way.
Life is hard. And again, we strive for the ideal. So the ideal is unity of mind, perfectly. And we're going to struggle for that. We're going to work for that. Then you also have free will. And people are going to choose to do what they want to do. It took 12 years for the Protestant movement that I grew up in to become Orthodox. That's how long we allowed the transition period to be. There were about 3,000 people in the group nationally. There's a book on it. There's a book called Becoming Orthodox by Father Peter Gilchrist that's about our journey. But it took about 12 years, and we started a publishing company to publish everything that everyone in our network of parishes needed to read. We started a monthly magazine in order to have articles on everything they needed to learn. And we took a long time to make that transition. In the end, 2,000 of those people in about 60 small parishes came into the Orthodox Church. About 1,000 did not come in. Some of them came in later. And you just, the process took long enough that at some point they realized they didn't want to do this anymore. It's getting too traditional, or it looks too much like Catholic or something to them, and they would stop coming. And it was a tragedy, but, my dad would always say, Jesus had Judas. And so we can't be surprised when some people, it's always a surprise who it is, but it should not be a surprise to us that some people don't make it on the journey. Yes, sir, in the back.
Yeah, I wrote down a question even, but these potential factors such as cross-professional, that's one in ethnic, and the example of that is reaching travel to Philadelphia. So in front of Philadelphia, there's really the Italian side, there's the Irish side. Speak slower.
I'm not.
I'll go start from the beginning. But do potential factors such as cross-professional or even ethnic, as I gave an example, at least as far as ethnic, being traveling through parts of Philadelphia that are clearly the Italian side or even the Irish side, something like that. Just weigh in on your 10-minute ideal, as well as through your study of this, perhaps internet even may encourage working from home, and thus your ideal, correct? But then again, I could be wrong. That's the question.
Father, can you repeat the question so that people
I would
who have
love
hearing
to. I'm not
problems
able
can
to.
understand it?
Can I come up and tell you?
Sure. Okay. Remind me again. When I look at you, it's blankly. First of all, so there's always a context for the ministry. And so whatever people are your neighbors, you have to be ministering to them. I make sure I answer your question, okay? Good. And so if my dad grew up in Eastside San Jose as a half English, half Dutch. He was the minority in the neighborhood. It was mainly Greeks and Italians and Asians. And so if we were starting a parish in that area, we would need to really assess what are the needs of that community. And some of them will be driven by the ethnicity, whether it's language or translations that you're doing, or cultural norms that need to be accommodated. So we're always going to contextualize the effort that we make. St. Nicodemus of the Holy Mountain says that God's will is good, this is from Scripture, good, acceptable, and perfect. It's very easy to figure out what is good. Should we open a church so that people can be saved along with us? Absolutely, good thing. But in order for it to be perfected, it has to be found to be acceptable as well. Because we know we can fast, which is fasting is good, but we can do it out of pride. And so then it's not acceptable and can't be perfected. So on a mission front, we look at what is good. Is it good to open a mission here? Yes. St. Nicodemus says what qualifies the will of God as being acceptable as well as good is the time and the place and the people involved. So then that's a whole vetting part of the process where what do these people that God has called me providentially to encounter, what do they need in order to be growing in the spiritual life? On the 10-minute rule, and if I don't answer your question, clarify, but on the 10-minute rule, again, it has to be contextualized. So in some places it might seem impossible, or you just, there's so much, you're in the middle of a big city. I'm a country boy, so I would say get out of the city. Find a place, and I have done this in my life. My parents did this multiple times. You gather the people that are with you. You figure out where they all are, or where they all would like to go, or feel called to go by God, and you either move the people to where the church is, or you move the church to where the people is, or you do both. You find a new place and a new church. On the, I guess I don't understand the 10-minute rule part, how that would be affected by ethnicity.
More so just like if you're, especially going through parts of Philadelphia, whether it comes to cross-confessional, even with then if it's.
I don't know what that
Catholic,
is. What's cross-confessional?
For example, like some might be Protestant, some might be Catholic, some might be Orthodox. In that particular case, even if you're on the Italian side, you might find a mixed bag of all that even. To be within the 10 minutes of your neighbor.
Yeah, so one of the assumptions today, and when we talk about mission building, we talk about creating a locale, a place of gathering for people who are interested in becoming Orthodox Christians, regardless of their ethnicity or origins. So we might start off with a diverse group of what we would call catechumen. So right now I have 20 catechumens. Some of them had no religious background. Some of them are Protestant or Catholic, but the goal is to bring all of them into the Orthodox faith. And the thing about, again, sweeping generalization, but so true, Christ has revealed to us the truth. And so we have to let the truth of Christ dictate everything that we do in the end. And so ethnicity may be a part of my pastoral effort, but it is not, in the end, it's not important. St. John of Damascus would call it, whether it's our cultural origin or the color of our skin or anything, it's accidental. It has no bearing in the end. And so pastorally, we want to be working with those various factors, but then the goal is unity in Christ. So, I don't know, does that help?
Yeah, as far as further intricacies.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're the only one willing to drag it on.
Your school is incorporated separately from the church?
The school exists as a subset of the church as a nonprofit. So it's a part of the church nonprofit corporation as far as California's law, nonprofit law. Our thrift store, by comparison, is a separate nonprofit entity. Yeah, and that's mainly for liability. Once we got into dealing with the public and stuff, people falling down and suing or something, we didn't want that directly connected to the church.
It kind of sounds like you and Patriarch Kirill got together, since he's trying to make sure that there's a church within walking distance throughout Moscow or Russia.
Okay, I hadn't heard about that.
Oh, yeah. He's building 3 a day, 3 churches.
Wow, no, God bless him. One of the things I was saying to somebody earlier is a lot of, Father Hans and I and Ladika, in the end, will start saying the same things because the truth of Christ is the same. The experience of the church is the same. And then for us individually, when enough time and effort has gone by, you realize what is true and what works, just given that we're humans in a fallen world and facing the particular struggles that we have. I would like to say, just as a little anecdote, just like you pursuing your salvation is the best thing you can do for your neighbor and for evangelization. In the same sense, on a more socio-cultural level, building a community of believers that are pursuing their salvation is the best thing you can do for our society. We do not, in my personal opinion, forgive me if this conflicts with anyone else's opinion, but personally, I don't want to be focused on where the world going down the drain. I get depressed by that. I do not watch the news. Another weird thing. My dad was a news junkie. Every evening, the TV on. I hate it. It literally depresses me. So I don't watch the news at all. I've proven that anything I really needed to know, someone will tell me. Thank you. I now know Patriarch Kirill is building parishes. And it's really true. I believe that because I've proven it. I live that way. I'm the archpriest of the church. I do not watch the news. I have no news feed. I don't look at the TV. Nothing. I find out everything I need to know. Or I have particular people in the church who they have, in a sense, a calling to stay aware of what's going on in the world, but to not be depressed by it and to strategize what we need to do. And I just get my information from them. One second, I was going to make another point. What were we talking about? Building churches. community. Yeah.
Patriarch Kirill.
Best for neighbor, best
Bring
for
us focus
society.
on the world, go down.
Oh yeah, that we don't want to be focused on that. We want to be focused on being the church of Christ. Because we are a part of society, and if we expand if we expand our sphere of society and culture locally here in a God-pleasing manner, in a salvific manner, what possibly could you do to make things better? The trajectory of the world is not going to be changed by the people we elect. It may speed it up or slow it down, but it's not going to change it. We know we're going towards an end. Have you read Revelation, right? We're not surprised by that. We know the Antichrist is coming. None of that is supposed to surprise us. But we delay the end of the world by our effort to keep the awareness of Christ and to keep the faith in the world. And one of the byproducts, or back to the material reality of that, is we create a community, a neighborhood, a physical space where when you come there, you have the mind of the church. And your kids run around in the yard, and everyone surrounding them is going to support their Orthodox worldview. We're creating a literal geographic area where we can have the Christian culture that preserves not only the faith, but it literally delays the end times because we're keeping the faith. The pause was long enough. We're done. God bless you all. Lydia, thank you so much for being here. Fathers, what a joy. And if there's anything that we talked about that I need to clarify, talk to Father John. I'd be happy to email with you.
Thanks, Father. Thank you very much, Father. Appreciate your input. At this time, I'd like Shay and Deacon Michael and Deacon Joseph to hand out these certificates of completion, which have been all filled out for you. If they call your name and they don't know who you are and they're looking for you, put your hand up so they can bring it to you. In the meantime, I wanted to share, there's a lot of interest and concern about tithing, and I wanted to share with you my strategy for donating to the church and how to express it. My strategy is called the STUN strategy, Strategic Total Utter Neglect. Let me say that again, Strategic Total Utter Neglect. And you'll see this on page 20 of the packet, you open it up here. When people take our new member class, at the end of the new member class, which goes over what is the actual gospel, what is the church, what are the benefits of the church, etc., and what is our parish like, we go over the parish membership agreement, and this is what is on page 20. And it says, as a member of a satellite, or of All Saints of North America Church, I agree to read the Bible daily, pray for members of my family, to follow church leaders, and be in agreement with the church's doctrine, to attend all worship services, keeping the feasts and fasts of the church, unless hindered by health or circumstances beyond my control, to share my faith regularly, invite people to church, and warmly welcome visitors, to abstain from gossip, murmuring, and negative talk. We put it right out there. To invest in my faith by tithing to the parish and giving alms and offerings to the needy. Now, we put this in here right deliberately because several times a year I point out that tithing, and this is nothing against what the other father is saying, it's saying exactly the same thing, but the Old Testament tithe is the Old Testament tithe. According to St. John Chrysostom, the righteousness of the New Testament exceeds the Old Testament righteousness. Therefore, we must exceed a tithe. So the minimum we should be doing is 10% plus 1. And don't laugh, that's accurate. A tithe plus $1 exceeds the Old Testament righteousness. So everybody who comes through our new member class understands that everyone else in the parish has already agreed to this. To participate in Bible study, to be involved in at least one ministry, to abstain from getting drunk, getting high, or viewing pornography, and to remain sexually pure. And before you're allowed to take the catechism class, you have to sign this. And even people who are coming from other Orthodox parishes have to take the class and agree to this. Well, as a result, I draw a modest salary from the church, and I have been doing so for over a year and a half. when the church was 2 years old. 2 years old. I was able to support myself and stop doing websites and graphic design. So it's not only possible, it's simple. It's simple. We simply put it out there. Now, how many people here from Asona? Okay. How many times a year do I preach on tithing? 0 to 1. You never hear me talk about it. How many times a month do we take a collection? We never take a collection. Ever. In fact, newcomers often come to me and say, you didn't pass around the plate. How am I supposed to give? I said, well, you can give online, like a lot of our people do, or you can put the envelope in back. It doesn't matter. And now the term that all of you members of our church are constantly hearing from me. Be responsible adult Christians. Don't be accountable. We can be accountable with you, but that's a lot of work for me. And it's a lot of work for you. Instead, most of us know what the right thing to do is, even if it's hard. Let's work on doing that. Let's be responsible adult Christians. I sound like a broken record as I go over this repeatedly. But over time, people are used to hearing it so much, they think they've known it their whole lives. And it becomes a much easier thing when the church is going along, rather than say, hey, giving is way down, wake up. I simply say, somewhere, remember, we've got to be responsible adult Christians. Ding, goes off in people's heads. The point is simply this. You don't have to talk about giving, tithing, stewardship necessarily in the traditional ways. And what I wanted to say was this. Please don't misunderstand what I'm about to say. In many ways, ministry should be a kind of science experiment, a lab experiment. We know how it works, but can we make it work better? I had a friend once say, try anything, even if it's wrong, but just try something different. So tweak this, try this, change this a little bit, see what happens, see what works out. And we've successfully done some of that. Some of the things we started off doing, we discarded because they weren't effective. They weren't worth the time and effort we were putting into them. They were counterproductive. I'm not afraid, by the way, to steal great ideas. When the lockdown happened, Father Thaddeus, in his great joy to share good news with me, said, hey, guess what? I put a sign up on my church, and it says private, closed to the public. Private religious healthcare operation providing essential services, important word, psychological support and sacramental medications. So I immediately made copies of this in paper and I put them all over our church. Still one on the front door over there. And I just had this one made because that one's falling apart. I also had one made that says, wash your hands, you sinners, and cleanse your hearts, from James 4:4. Everybody got a kick out of that. That's still up on the wall over there. Point is, I stole it from Father Thaddeus for good effect. It's useful. It tells anybody that says, we shouldn't be doing that, I said, oh, no, we're essential. See, it says it right here. And we're providing important services, psychological support, healthcare, sacramental medications. By the way, this is a private healthcare operation. So get out. We're a little busy. We have work to do. Many of you have heard me say, the liturgy must go on. The liturgy must go on. We're not afraid of what the Antichrist might bring because we're not paying attention to him. We love Christ. We want to pay attention to him. Even if the Antichrist is around, it doesn't even matter to us. We must get closer to Christ. You wonder why your prayer life might be down a little bit? Because your love for God needs to move up. You think your fasting is not doing so well? Your love needs to increase. And your tithing is a struggle. Your love for God is missing something. As your love for God increases, your spiritual level meets it. It's one of the things they never talk about. It's directly related to love. And the love for God and the love for our neighbor is what allows theosis to take place, ironically, at about the same level. So if we want to advance that, we have to advance in love. Now, go back to page 21 here. Did you pass out all of the certificates?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. I think it's important to be goal-oriented. So in my own head, I set goals for myself for the year that I never meet. But I have some success trying to meet them. And I think it's important in anything that we can measure, that we do measure it so we know whether or not we've made progress. Now, you can't measure everything, but you can measure how many new households joined the church this year. How many people did we reach rather than them finding us? Because to be honest, right now, 99% of the people that are going to darken the door of an Orthodox church, it's low-hanging fruit. They're finding us. And we want to be ready to catch them, of course, but we have to be able to share our testimony. I've talked many times about how to put together your little 30-second to 2-minute talk about sharing your personal testimony. It's not anything that's vague. It can be very specific. You can practice it. But it all ends up the same way. And I'm glad somebody mentioned about the internet. I've done internet ministry for a long time. It's very taxing, but it all is directed to one thing. And you see it most accurately on Journey to Orthodoxy. At a certain point, we say to people, contact us so we can put you in touch with a local parish. 99% of the work that's done in the church is done at the parish level. That's why mission work and mission development is planting missions that have to become parishes. They have to develop and grow. All right. As many of you know, after the new member class, there is a 20-lesson pre-recorded catechism class that we do. It covers 20 different topics and introduction to the interior life. Then there are audio lectures we have people listen to. Then we go through Clark Carlton's book, The Faith. This is all on our website. So catechumens go with their membership coordinator one step all the way through. It takes almost a year. And there's even the checklist, which is in page 25 and 26, so that it can be kept track of. Trying to make it easy for people to get a foothold on understanding the Orthodox faith rather than simply reading a book or two and trying to get in to see Father to talk about it, because priests are busy. And it's very, very difficult to do that. This was actually born out of a great material benefit of suddenly having 4 satellite missions. So I can't teach an online class 4 times a week. I'm taking care of my father-in-law who has Parkinson's. I don't have time for that. So pre-recording them saved me a lot of time. And likewise, I want to end with this. Of course, if there's questions and answers, we'll talk about it a little bit more. But as I said, I coined the term ecclesioclasm recently, which is the deliberate attempt at breaking the church. I think that's what's actually going on here. That's why I say the liturgy has to go on. The liturgy must go on. There's fathers in Greece talking about there possibly becoming an oncoming shortage of wine around the world. Well, that will affect divine liturgy. And we found out recently that a very popular form of charcoal is no longer being manufactured. There's others, to be sure, but the one I've used my whole priesthood now doesn't literally exist anymore, unless you can get older versions of it and pay extra, which is ridiculous. And I don't believe in coincidences either. I don't see a devil behind every water heater, but I can see the signs of the times. God has gathered us together to prepare for the signs of these times. It's an exciting time, not a fearful time. It's a great time. And I want to assure you, we've done everything we can do to bring people with great experience and great insight so that you could interact with them. And I want to share one other thing with you. On the very last page of the packet, you'll see a QR code. If you scan this in your phone, you can download the Arizona Missions Conference phone app. This is what it looks like. It looks like your name tag. And it has the speakers, the sponsors, documents, including Father's parish as community. I think it's like 90 pages long, fun to read. The letter from Archbishop Kirill, Metropolitan Jonas establishing and overseeing Orthodox missions in America, and my Orthodox missions at the dawn of the digital age. Asona satellites, so the entire Asona catechumen process with all the passwords. So if somebody needs it, you can share that with them. Helpful feeds, and you can even show the QR code to someone who wants to see it, wants to download it themselves. The point is that as soon as we have these recordings edited, they will be available only through the app. So if you want to listen to what we've talked about today, if you want to see the video or whatever, this is where you're going to see it, only on the Mission Developments app. We want to put it at your fingertips and try to make technology, which is so easily to become a tool of the devil, a tool for good use, a tool to help you spread the gospel, share the faith, calm people's spirit, bring some peace to them, and advance them in their own faith and knowledge of God, which is what this is all about. That's sharing love. It's very important. I'm very grateful to all of you here. I'm not going to talk for another hour. We're going to get out early. But, yeah, you're welcome. But are there any other questions about anything? For those who are not able to attend, we have a whole bunch more of those tumblers. Take some home for your family, because otherwise they're going either in the trash or to Goodwill. I'm not taking them back to my house, okay? Likewise, the stickers you have with the cross and the laurels on, you can put them on the tumblers or the back of your car window or whatever works. That's what I've done, of course. I'm really grateful for all of you here. You took time, effort, and paid money to advance your own vocation, to fulfill your own calling. And I hope that at least the food was good. I hope that it's been entertaining, and I hope you've had a good time, because God has not given us a spirit of fear, but a spirit of boldness. And I've said that a lot in 2020 also. This is not a time to be afraid of anything the world has to offer. The world is an immeasurable mess. But we have Christ. We have the Eucharist. We have found the true faith. We don't have to be afraid of anything. The only thing we have to be afraid of is forgetting to repent. Other than that, brethren, the world is a spiritual oyster. Good hunting. Thanks very much. Any questions about anything? Your beatitude.
I wanted to let people know I'm going to be teaching a course for the Midwest Pastoral School starting on the 21st on planting and establishing new missions. So I believe it's about 6 or 8 week course. Midwest Pastoral School, you can access that through the website of the Midwest Diocese of Roquefort. So there's not going to be a lot of homework. A lot of it's going to be lecture and discussion. There'll be some, and I think this is already going to be part of that. See, I'm doing research here. So if anybody is interested and especially involved in planning a mission, you might find it interesting.
Thanks, Ladika. I will make sure there's a link to that class up on our website by Monday morning. Probably tonight, but I've got a lot of cleaning up to do, so I'm not sure I'm going to get to it. If there are no additional questions, again, the only thing I ask is that please take the tumblers until they're gone. Tonight at 6:30 we'll have Vespers, and tomorrow there's a liturgy at 8, I understand, and then we'll have 10 o'clock Divine Liturgy with his Beatitude as the principal celebrant. So Metropolitan Jonah will be the celebrant at the 10 a.m. liturgy, which is nice because it's less work for me because we have deacons now. So when that's present, the priest just stands on the altar and waits for the bishop to say, "Hey, Father, you want to take a litany or something?" It's not very much for us to do. Anyway, brethren, please pray every day. Pray for each other. Please pray for us, and be assured of our prayers for you. And cross boundaries. Take chances. The Holy Spirit is out there, preparing the ground for you. Let me end with this. The quote on the logo, "A ship in harbor is safe, but that's not what ships are built for." That's a quote by John G. Shedd, the greatest merchant in the United States. And it's a perfect description of the church and everyone in it. A ship in harbor is safe, but that is not what ships are built for. Glory to Jesus Christ.
Glory forever.